As promised, sharing about God's mind from Rabbi David Ingber at Romamu. Basically, mental Hasidism. God promises we're not here for nothing, and it's all happening for a reason. And the less complex features influence and affect the more complex features. It's like sending messages. The brain can override, whether it's urges to urine, to grab, release, sometimes too much, or to repression even. Ideally, we can actually do sublimation, channeling of the energy. We can say as a toe, I'd like this, step into the water, and God says, okay, and if in alignment, then God goes too and gets wet. I'm able to be the godliness in the physical world that I'm looking for, God's toe into getting feet wet. And when we're ruled justly with awe of God, we can decree God to be when righteously in the identification of being organismically part of God. Like a pitchfork overturns the previous threshing floor, the creative energy of possibilities endlessly accessed under my existing foundation from judgment to love, like an infant birthing in the father, the love of the object it wants, because the waiting makes the wanting, or in other words, the wanting because it's not here yet. So the father loves to satisfy the baby's or the child's needs. It gets pleasure derived from giving pleasure. Like a pain in the leg awakens the desire in the mind, to awaken desire in the hand, to remove the pain. God gets joy from my joy. This is like tribal. We have a family body, which is wellness versus disease. And we can come into the garden of the body to enjoy physical pleasure, capacity of the body. And this cutting, which is like, can cause pressure on the two sides that were once one, we turned it into a compassion. So aggression can become love. We could like squeeze it rather than cut it. Constriction into expansion. Law into presence. Giving it back to God. People are looking for a partner or relief or comfort or ease from real pain and suffering. And God, I hope you enjoy this in this ethical, moral awareness that doesn't take shortcuts. We can change our trajectory. We can change the trajectory of the entire universe. We can notice there's pain in the world. There's pain in me. There's pain here. Multiple levels of lack, emptiness, loneliness. It's God also in us. As we are in our body too, what's full in us is, or missing, is the same with me. Or what's full or missing in you is the same as me and you, and same without it here. And we know mevatel gezerah, which is to nullify a decree. We can change a world instead of asking God to change a world. We can change patterns. This is called transmutation. And subverting the inherited theologies. In other words, inheritance like DNA, like mutations are when things change. We can use the quality of mutation for transmutation. We make a composite of the worst people and believe that's God as a representation of the rest of the positive, the best ones, as a negativity bias. For example, someone says, in this community that I grew up, they guilted me. Then we say, God shames and guilts us. But it's not true. That's not what the best or the positive is. And anyway, that's the healing. So who is a child in my circle who's sad when they're sad, happy when they're happy? These are the people we want, the genuine blessings. And that's how we know that really differences give dignity. Material culture solidifies separateness, either me or you. And this is what the sin of the knowledge of good and evil is really the knowledge of me and you, or this or that. It's unlimited resources in a real way, rather than there's only enough for me or you. And he goes on to continue, Rabbi Ingber, I was about to say Dr. Ingber, Rabbi Ingber, nothing so opaque to block the cure. It's easier to work with elevating desire than removing pollutants. In other words, prevention is better than the cure. So nothing is so opaque to block the cure, the cure. So either we could let's say, for example, someone's addicted to alcohol. It's better to desire that spiritual awakening, to go for a run. This is not applying to me. I right now don't drink, and I'm not physically yet ready to run, but maybe I'm very close. But so somebody who's is able to elevate the desire to transcend and get numb to like the physical world, rather than remove the alcohol once it's in them, which creates other issues, right? So our thoughts come from above with the inwardly emanation qualities of whatever sphera, magnet, it must be rectified. Then with the required equalizer. In other words, it has to be clarified, returned, elevated, whether it's love, beauty, awe, fear, lack, anger. Breakthroughs are like these clogs that melt down inside with charge trap lights that are exposed. But dignity at the source of it all, divinity at the source of it all, so we can find the seed and peel the form, stripping the content and seeing the origin as pointing to the wholeness. So I think in medicine they call it root medicine. But anyway, witnessing the longings, like the whole version, how did it get separated? The root, the whole version. So witnessing true longings is from earlier iterations of the self, and now the address is allowing for retrieval. So I actually said something like that earlier today. I said I felt like I was receiving messages from a galaxy that I could not get to anymore. It was long gone. But now I can just listen. I can't say anything back, but I could receive. And just really appreciate how every thought is a gift from God. There's this hybridization from the worldly construct with a divine inspiration where we can see in the mind's eye which quality was born in me from that thought and lift it up, which is like to give pleasure to God. And they're also looking at the beauty of time, how it does something to corporeal beauty that cannot erode what is impermanent. And objects with ego grafts, they're like grasping a desire that can be attached to emptiness. It's the sense of holding on to something, but is there a something? So in everything, there's the expansion, spreading out the divine one, the power. The whole worth is suffused with divinity, where all is animated with energy that upon noticing its true insideness will bring us back to God. It's a great transcendence. We don't know. It's really all unknown. It's a mystery. And then, obviously, in order to work a little bit with my projections, like we said, the earlier address, for me, the hardest element with that is my father. The version of me that was living with him as a child and would go visit him during forced visitation, where he used that as a kind of like a leverage to get us to come clean his house in order for him to pay child support, which he didn't. So I'm saying he tortured, he denied me this satisfaction and pleasure and affection and comfort and safety and protection and praise, understanding, dignity and privacy and reassurance. Sometimes so he could feel like the useful, powerful, lovable rescuer when he relieved me from his own abuse and neglect. He deprived me and this is a torture, from mercy, benefit of the doubt, validation, encouragement, belonging, freedom, expression, space and time, rewards, keeping his word, normalizing. He never saw me as precious life, soul, divinity, godliness, not to be avoided or discarded, harmed, or treated like a burden. I was an innocent, soft, helpless baby who could be considered a gift or a teacher, a lover, a purpose, traveling oasis of spiritual innocence. He didn't see himself that way either. Like, he also went through a Holocaust where he couldn't change his circumstances and was trained, kind of. Like, that's what he must have gone through if he did it to me, or he inherited it. And I decided I'm ready now. I want to say I write these things from years ago. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I don't know exactly, but I wrote, but I still feel like probably, how could I say I don't want this, right? Ready now for someone who wants to kiss and hug me, make me feel special and precious, and wants to hear what I have to say, and reads my messages happily. Someone who wants to make time and space for me for their own sake. Someone who wants to make me laugh and smile and wants to feed me, gift me, is patient, kind, merciful, soft-spoken, and also doing the work. Happens to be my father at a loud, aggressive voice. And finally, I would like to finish with the harmony that Rabbi Doctor, maybe he's going to become a doctor, Rabbi David Ingber. He certainly deserves to be a doctor, a spiritual doctor. Rabbi Ingber says how Avram, loving kindness, the endless, the unbounded, Yitzchak, and these are the patriarchs in the Torah, and we're currently learning about their life stories. And what we're up to in the Parsha is actually Jacob's son, Joseph. being sold to Arabs by Midianites to Egypt. He ended up in a house of Potiphar, the chamberlain for Paro, in Egypt. So Yitzchak is edges, boundedness, and judgment. Yaakov is compassion, mercy, benefit of the doubt. And just to reiterate, Avram is loving kindness, the father of the fathers, endless, unbounded. And these are like derivatives from extreme loving kindness to extreme judgment to compassion, which tempers them, born from each other. There's a second force, a third force, a fourth force. What's late, and that's why I mentioned Joseph, because there's the messianic force is in his son Judah and in his son Joseph. And it was Judah's idea to sell him. So second force, third force, fourth force, it was latent in Isaac. It was no longer dormant in Yaakov, who had the yin-yang of all that came before. When we say yin-yang here, we mean like the thrust and the drawing in. So Avram had this, there was the joy of a love seed planted in the child, which gives grandchildren of love, returned by child, being a force of love in the world. The gift is returned. Like Abraham had his grandchild, Yaakov, who brought loving kindness into like vessels. Like it went from extreme loving kindness into like vesselness, not loving kindness, but vesselness, which is like edges and yes versus no, on versus off, like separations, not good or bad, just is. And that was able to put these loves, this concealed love of compassionate being is always inside us, even if it's just a spore and it needs a little water. It's the loving kindness in a vessel. So limitations or darkness is a time for, or out of control, well, it's time for love, or out of control messiness, like time for bounds. Compassion is that harmonizer. So learning to see what is born in me or you and what the derivatives are born from that in the world. And that takes reflection. And usually it's a grandparent that has been able to reflect over the course of their life. It's not necessarily linear for the process to be observed. So what are we doing here? Like I said, the force. So by bettering ourselves or any of it, we have to make the world better for the children that are to come. I'll stop here and wish you a blessed evening. Bye.